Good evening, everyone. Today I have the pleasure of presenting Victoria Jeffs. Her personal motto is, if it's not life-changing, it's not worth it. She lives her life to the fullest and strives to help others in the same manner. In answer to her own question, why was I born? Victoria authored Core Purpose and Core Purpose 2.0. In these journeys, she helps people discover that the best life is not just who we are right now, but in who we are becoming. Her programs are taught across 5 continents and in over 21 countries, and it has been translated into 10 different languages. She loves to find practical applications to complex theories, believing that knowledge is power for everyone. She has a passion for cooking, art museums, sushi, and Indian food. Victoria lives in Colorado with her very British husband and a small zoo of animals. Welcome, Victoria.
Thank you, Aisha. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for attending. Just a quick, just to find out, did anybody attend the last session that we had with Core Purpose? You can do a show of hands or something. Aisha, do you see anybody there that attended the last session we did? Oh, I cannot hear you, Aisha.
Yep, sorry. Yes, there are people in the chat saying that they have participated and have responded that way.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you so much. Well, everyone, again, thank you so much for coming back. If you went to one of our other sessions, which I think was a really fun time that we had. And for those of you who are new, I really appreciate you coming. I always look forward to this. I don't have this on my bio, which I probably should actually add to it. My background is in neuroscience and psychology for mental health. And so I very much am interested in the brain science behind why people behave the way they behave, why we make decisions, and how can we alter some of these decisions and make it easier for us to make new decisions. And so I'm really glad that you're here. I do know Aisha. She's been to a couple of my classes. She's absolutely wonderful. And I've just met, I think Tanya is her name. And so I'm very blessed to know these ladies as well. Parents Challenge is a fabulous organization. Make sure you vote. And so do the right thing on the proposition so that we can make sure that we are getting school choice on the ballot, which I think it is on the ballot. So make sure you're voting for that. So again, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. This is chapter 3 in a series of, in Core Purpose 1.0, we have 8 chapters, and each chapter talks about some very specific topics within an individual's life. And so when I wrote this, I actually took the top tier issues that people are going to confront anywhere around the world. It doesn't make any difference what your socioeconomic position is, what your faith is. It doesn't make any difference of any of these. These are human issues that we are all going to face at one time or another in our life. And so my emphasis when I teach these programs all revolve around a central theme, which is, what is our purpose in life? And so purpose in life is extremely important, because when we have purpose in life, it changes our whole construct in terms of how we view our meaning in life, how we view what our contribution is to this world, and what can we do to not only enhance our communities, but what will actually impact me as well. And so, so there's a lot of information in the class that I did before. I actually spent a lot of time going through what purpose is and why we do it, the neuroscience behind purpose, the psychology behind purpose in life. And so I'm not going to take the time to do that today, because we're just going to spend some time on healthy relationships. But I just wanted you to understand that when we talk about purpose in the context of healthy relationships, it's making reference to what our main theme is when we go through the Core Purpose programs. Obviously, if you went through all of the chapters and all of the programs in Core Purpose, then you would get a real clear picture of how each one of these modules fit in together and how it all speaks towards how can we discover and live our purpose in life. And so one of the reasons why we're doing healthy relationships is healthy relationships are the number one reason why people can live develop, and fulfill their purpose in life. Unhealthy relationships, conversely, are the number one reason why people cannot attain their purpose in life. In fact, unhealthy relationships are the number one reason why people are not successful or they have problems in life. They're the number one distractor. Unhealthy relationships are when you're trying to live your life and actually have a good life. And listen, everybody wakes up in this world and everybody wants to have a great life. Nobody wakes up and says, when I grow up, I want to be a failure. Nobody wakes up and says, I want to have multiple relationships that leave me saddled with a lot of heartache and a lot of trauma. Nobody does that. We all want to have relationships that will enhance our quality of life and so that we can really enjoy life on this beautiful planet that God has blessed us with. And so, unfortunately, though, we oftentimes have a very limited view of what the relationships actually, how to actually form a healthy relationship, how to identify a healthy relationship. And because of that, we kind of say, well, this is the reason why we need a healthy relationship, or this person is nice, so they must be a healthy relationship. And it just doesn't work that way. It's just not that easy. And so what we're going to talk about in this particular chapter is how to identify healthy relationships, how to become a healthy person so that you can be healthy in the relationships that you're involved with, especially your children, how you can role model being a healthy relationship so that they don't repeat the cycles that maybe we have experienced. I had many unhealthy relationships in my lifetime, and I had to do a lot of work in order to work through that so that I would no longer be attracted to or attract unhealthy people into my life, because it was completely a train wreck when that would happen, but it also was setting my daughter up to repeat the same history that I did, because she was going to learn about relationships based upon the relationships I had in my life. So I was her number one example for that. And that was really important for me to break some of those cycles. And so let's go ahead and talk about relationships. And so in terms of this chapter and this class that you're going to take tonight, we're going to be making reference a lot to healthy relationships. So if you're like just saying the word relationship, I'm going to always pair or insert the word healthy or unhealthy, so we're very clear on what kind of relationship that we're talking about. In this chapter, you're also going to build a model for yourself. And so if you have any of these handouts, that's fantastic. If you don't have any of the handouts, feel free to request some handouts, maybe from the Parents Challenge office. And also, you can take notes with it, draw pictures, and you will have this slide presentation available to you so that you can also look at that and refresh your memory with what we're talking about. So hopefully this is going to be a really good class for you, okay? It's one of the favorite classes that I really enjoy teaching. All right, and so I always start my classes with a story. And I'm going to tell you a story. This is a true story. When I first rolled this program out about 14 years ago, I field tested this. I ran a pilot program for the Department of Human Services here in El Paso County. And so I did it not just in El Paso County, but I ran it for 5 counties for the Department of Human Services. And then I also ran it at the same time, 5 different counties for high schools to see what would happen if individuals went through this program and how it would impact their life. And those results that came back were really very compelling. So the high schoolers, how we measured success with this was how well their grades improved and the things that they were able to experience. And all of their grades improved for all the students that went through it, which was fantastic. And so in the Department of Human Services, 90% of the people who went through the program were able to exit the Department of Human Services and become self-sufficient. And this was a real important step that they were looking at and realized that this is really important. And so I say that because the idea of purpose being a game changer is really true. And so this was part of the idea of moving towards our purpose, and that includes this healthy relationship. So this is part of the story, and it's one of the stories that came out of the Department of Human Services. So this girl came through our class, and I'll use a name that doesn't belong to her. Her name was Cameo. This is not her real name. And she came through the Department of Human Services, and she was pregnant with her first baby. She was a beautiful, beautiful young woman. She was single, and she came from generational poverty. And so it was compulsory that she had to go through this program. And so when she came to the class, I could tell that it was going to be a difficult class because she was very aggressive. She was, I don't want to say she was non-compliant, but she was just very combative. And so you would say anything and she would argue with you. And always give pushback on it. There wasn't a lot of room in her mind for learning something different. So I felt like this was going to be a difficult class, but I really wanted her to be able to engage with the material because I knew it was going to really benefit her. So, excuse me, as we were going through the program, I did notice in that month that she kind of started softening up, and instead of being combative, she started asking very thoughtful questions. It was really, it was really an interesting thing to start watching this change that Cameo started experiencing. So at the end of the class, Cameo stood up and she said, I really believe I have a much clearer idea of what my purpose in life is going to be. And I really think that what I would like to do is to go into counseling because I'm actually a very good counselor. And so she went ahead and applied for a grant to get into the university. And so it was approved. And so she was going to go into the university and start her counseling degree. Very excited about it, her process for that. And so part of this agreement with the Department of Human Services they paid for the grant for her university. And so she had to still take some classes at the department in order to work out through her contract with them. So she was doing that. And then one day I get a phone call from her and she was pretty panicky. And she said, I need to talk to you. I'm in a lot of trouble. So she came to my office and I asked her what was happening. And she said, this is what's happened. She said, I went to class at the Department of Human Services and I sat down on the front row, and this instructor that came in, and I knew her from previous classes, she looked at me and she said, Cameo, why are you in my class? And I explained to her, well, this is part of my contract because I need to take this as, part of my exit strategy, leaving the Department of Human Services. And apparently the instructor looked at her and said, Cameo, you are a waste of breath. By being in this class, you are literally taking the oxygen out of the air that somebody else could be breathing. And so that was really unbelievable that this woman said it. And so I thought to myself, oh my gosh, Cameo, what did you do? Because Cameo was not only aggressive verbally, but in her history, she was very aggressive physically. So I thought she beat this woman up. She probably clocked her. I mean, who knows what happened? And so I said, what'd you do? And she said, well, I picked up my books and I just walked out of the classroom. And I was so relieved that she said that. And so I said, and what else happened? And so 6 other students followed Cameo. They just picked up their books and left. And so she said, this woman has the power to end my grant and to cause a lot of trouble. I'm doing so well in school. I'm on the honor roll. I want to finish strong. I want to get my degree. And, I'm going to have a baby boy, and I want a different life for him than the life I grew up in. I want to break some cycles here. And so I said, I'm so proud of you, Cameo, that you did not say anything to this woman. I am so grateful. Let me talk to her boss and let's see what we can do. I need the names of the other students who left the class with you. So I contacted this person. I'm sorry, my cat just popped up. And so I contacted this person and said, this is what the story was. This is what happened. And so he checked up on the story. He talked to the other students that walked out of the room with her, and they confirmed what she said. And so ultimately what happened, unfortunately, is this woman was fired. She should have been corrected. If she needed to be fired, that needed to happen because Cameo needed to be protected. And other students needed to be protected as well. And unfortunately, this woman needed some help as well. And so, which she did not choose to receive. And so what happened in the end, excuse me, is that Cameo was able to maintain her grant and she was able to finish her school. But I asked her, Cameo, why didn't you hit this woman? Why did you, in the past you would have punched her. So tell me what the difference was. Why didn't you do that? And this is what she said. She said, because I learned that my purpose is so important. It's my purpose is worth fighting for. She said, I did not want to jeopardize it by getting into an altercation with someone who had the power to change the trajectory of my future. And she goes, I learned that it was so important to keep my cool because of some of the other classes that I took through Core Purpose. And by doing this, I not only protected my future, I now have protected my son's future. And I have rewritten, this is what she said, rewritten my future for my son. And so this was such a beautiful way that she expressed it, because what she was really saying is that I've changed his future. I've changed the trajectory of a story that would have repeated itself in my lifetime because of the life that I have had, the relationships I've chosen in my life, the behaviors I've chosen in my life. And his path was set to follow that same pattern. But because I changed, now I knew the world was going to change, and it was going to change for my son. So that's what was so beautiful about it. So Cameo went on, incidentally, and she did graduate. She was able to get her degree, which was so amazing. And because of the new relationships that she was forging in this new environment, she wasn't in the same environment. Her education put her in a different environment. So she met different people. She ended up meeting a man who went to medical school, and ended up marrying him, and he adopted her son. And so a very different life than the life that she was raised in. And so because of that, she became a role model for nieces and nephews and cousins, because they were able to see, if Cameo could do this, then we can do it. And so it provided a beautiful example for her to be a mentor to other family members and help them then to break cycles in their life. And then that brings us to this life lesson. And after every story we have a life lesson. And the life lesson is nothing changes when nothing changes. Make sure you write that down. And I want you to pay attention to how I do this. So I want you to look at the screen and see what I'm doing. Nothing changes when nothing changes. And so what this means is that my environment is not going to change unless I change the way I think. And how we do that is every time that we learn something really powerful, something really important, which is what I hope you're going to learn throughout this next couple of hours. When you learn something in this class and apply it, don't just think about it, because thinking about it is nice, but until we apply it and say, I'm going to actually practice what I'm learning, it feels awkward, it feels different, but I'm going to do it. What is going to happen? It's going to change neurons in your brain. Now, this is really important because inside our brain, we have billions of neurons and brain cells within the confines of our skull. And so when we have behaviors, we have learned behaviors, we actually connect, we actually create, it's like bridges, highways and bridges in our brain. They kind of look like this. And so these neurons start having conversations with each other. So this neuron will have a conversation with this neuron, and it's called the synaptic connection. And so they're going to have conversations, and that's how communication happens within the brain, and then it goes throughout the whole body. And so when we learn something, we get this. And so if, let's just say, we learned the wrong way to have a relationship, whether it's right or wrong, your brain made a connection. Your brain created a highway and a bridge that says this is the road that you're going to travel on now whenever you have any relationship. So let's say some of you said, look, I had some bad experiences with a relationship. Anybody have bad relationships in their life? Raise your hand. I mean, I have. And so let's say that you say, look, I found a new person. Let's say you're a female and you're saying, hey, I found a new boyfriend. He's amazing. His name is Bob. He is not the same guy that I had before. He's not like any of the other guys I've ever had before. And then 6 months later, what ends up happening is you're like, wow, guess what? I just have the same Bob. And I would have said to this person when I talked to him, honestly, same guy, different face. And so what happens is that you weren't intentionally looking for the same guy that you had in the past. Maybe we'll call him Joe. You're not looking for another Joe in your life. You're looking for somebody fresh that you're like, I want a new guy. But somehow you end up with Joe again. And so the reason why this happens is when you have these formations that have been formed in your brain, and let's say it's the relationship formation, it's like taking exit 132. You are like, I'm driving on autopilot. And have you ever been driving and you suddenly show up at work or at the grocery store and you're like, I don't remember driving here, but somehow I made it through here safely. I didn't, excuse me, I didn't have any car accidents, but I really don't remember actually driving here. It's because your brain went on autopilot. And that's what happens with anything that we do because our brain likes shortcuts. It likes to be efficient. And when it's efficient, it's saying, okay, I made a connection. So you don't have to learn how to do this relationship again, or you don't have to learn how to take exit 132. You already know how to take it. And so you're driving along in your relationship and you take exit 132 and you realize that's the bad thing to do. So you're like, I'm going to get a brand new boyfriend or a brand new girlfriend. I'm going to be able to do this. You're driving down the relationship highway. Before you know it, you've taken exit 132 and you're like, how did I get here? I keep doing it over and over. Well, what we are going to show you how to do is to take a different exit. And we're going to show you how to break down this connection in your brain and tear it apart and get rid of it, dismantle it. We're going to get some road construction here, and we are going to have a new exit 145. Let's get a new exit so that when you apply these new things, you're going to help your brain to create a new synaptic pathway inside of your skull, so that once you get used to doing this, once you start doing it on a regular basis, it will come naturally, just like the old way did. Only this exit's going to take you to a different ending, a different relationship with a much better prospect and a much better future. And so this is going to be really important. So remember this life lesson when you're practicing some of these things you're going to learn about relationships, that nothing changes when nothing changes. And so even though you're motivated to make some changes, if we don't have the right tools, we're not going to be able to build the right exit. And so that's what we're going to do in this chapter. Okay. All right. And if you have any questions or anything, please make sure that you notify the moderators so that I can answer any questions. Is that good? Okay. And so let's go ahead and keep going on this. So what is a good side to a healthy relationship? Well, relationships have a good side and a bad side. The reason why I say that is relationships in general are really super powerful. And so here's just a few of these indicators. Now on your page, you are actually going to have more of these written down than I actually have on the screen here. So let me I'll say need book. I'm going to request my book to come over to me because it's in another room right now. And but let's just look at a couple of these. They tend to be more stable. People in a healthy relationship live longer and are generally more emotionally and physically healthy. And why would that be? Well, the reason why this is because we have somebody in our life that we want to be healthy for. I don't want my husband to ever be sick. I don't want him to take risks in his life. I don't want him to be unwell. I don't want him to eat really poor quality food because he means so much to me. I want to make sure that he takes care of his body and he feels the same way about me. So in healthy relationships, we look out for each other like that. We're very careful to make sure that we're living our life for the good of the person that lives with us because we love them so much. We want them to thrive. We don't want them to be ill. People in a healthy relationship have a lower incidence of suicide. And why is that? It's because people who are in a healthy relationship have less negative drama. We have more to live for. We have more to look forward to. Healthy relationships tend to be those people that bring out the best in us. Okay, same thing with this. Thanks, sweetie. People in a healthy relationship, they're also involved with fewer risk-related incidences or behaviors. Why is that again? Just like I said before, it's because I don't want to take risks if I think that it might harm me, because then Graham's going to pay the price for something that I do. And I think that's a real important point to make. When I do something that is harmful to myself, I'm actually making him pay the consequence for that. And healthy relationships always, always look to each other to say, how will my behavior impact your quality of life? And so, and it's the same thing. I mean, think about it with your children. I mean, if your children, are having a lot of problems and they're really struggling with things, it really impacts your quality of life because you're worried about your children. You do not want your children, to have difficulties. You want them to have a really good life. But if they're not having a good life, then it makes our life poor. We end up with a poor quality of life as well. So that's what happens in any healthy relationship. Okay. All right, so there's a lot more, and I want you to get a chance to take a look at the page that you have, which looks like this. And so if you get the handout, and really take a look at all of the different things that it actually speaks to. In fact, I'll tell you, I'll take the time to actually read them all in case you don't have the handouts with you. Okay, so we did the top 4. Let's keep going on. People in a healthy relationship require less health care. They are more likely to recover from illness. They have fewer accidents and injuries. They have an increased level of nutrition. They report increased satisfaction in the workplace. They report fewer feelings of loneliness, have fewer risk-related behaviors, have the time and chance, this is kind of like my favorite one, to develop the qualities needed for success and the quality of life, such as you develop unselfishness, adaptability, caring, and delayed gratification. And these are all really important because healthy relationships develop you and mature you. Instead of holding you back and dragging you down, where you're always thinking about, oh my gosh, I have to meet so and so because we have shared custody, or oh my gosh, the person that I'm with right now just makes me always feel like I can never do anything. I always feel so stupid when I'm this person. Or maybe you make the other person feel that way. See, that relationship is a relationship that is not only unhealthy for you physically and mentally, it also blossoms out and it's unhealthy physically and mentally to the children and the other family members that are involved with this. So healthy relationships, there's no downside. There's just no downside to a healthy relationship. Okay. All right. So let's move on with this. Now we're going to look at building a relationship model. And so you'll get some images on the screen that'll help you see how you can actually build this. You're also going to see some cartoons on this that are going to explain some things to you. And so, but let's talk about a couple things in these relationships. A healthy relationship requires 2 things, something called foundation. You have to have a foundation. Think of it as a house. And then we call it a style, the style. So like what sits on top of the foundation. In this case, I think it's going to be like a tree house or something. But what we want to explain is that you need to have these in order to have a healthy relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a business relationship, whether it's people that you know at church, whether it's people that you know anywhere. This model that you're going to build is going to help you understand what relationships, what's needed in a relationship so that you can have a successful relationship and keep it strong and healthy. And we're also going to show you how to manage relationships that are not healthy and where to place them in your life so they don't impact you. Okay. So this is going to actually be really important. Okay, well, let's look at this. This is called a neuroscience alert. And a neuroscience alert just gives us a little information about our brain. Did you know that when you have healthy relationships, the stress hormone cortisol, and we talk a lot about cortisol through our programs, is not flooding your brain cells and causing damage? In fact, your brain is experiencing feel-good hormones such as dopamine, which puts you in a place to not only enjoy life, but also to have less drama. And so this is really important because cortisol, while it's a really important hormone in your body and a neurotransmitter in your body, we need it to live. it's also considered a stress hormone because this is the hormone that comes into your body when you're experiencing trauma or stress, and it's a call to action. Pardon me for that. Let me mute that. And so it is saying call to action. You have to respond to something. Okay. And so, but what happens is if you have a chronic flow of cortisol in your body and brain because of unhealthy relationships, it's actually going to damage your brain cells and it's going to damage the rest of your body. And so, while we talk about this at length in the other parts of the programs and show brain images, it's enough to know right now that when you're in a healthy relationship, it counteracts the damage of the stress hormone and it actually heals your brain. And so it puts dopamine in your body and serotonin and some beautiful neurotransmitters that repair the damage that you might have experienced from unhealthy relationships. And so healthy relationships are very, very powerful. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. All right, so we're going to see a little cartoon here in a moment. And so make sure your volume is up so you can hear this, okay?
Have you ever experienced a relationship that left you feeling exhausted and hurt? Maybe you thought you had so much in common with this person, but discovered over time that you made a big mistake allowing this person to have such a huge amount of influence in your life. In unhealthy relationships, your life can be turned upside down and can even leave you with trauma that may impact you for a long time. Have you ever wondered how you can figure out ahead of time if a relationship is a healthy one for you? This is a really important question because we already know that healthy relationships are required for you to not only live a great life, but to also live your purpose. We are going to build a model called the Pillars of Intimacy. These pillars will represent the foundation of a healthy relationship and will help you identify relationships that are good for you, or maybe you will recognize that some relationships are unhealthy for you. These pillars also support your relationships, so it is important to keep these pillars healthy. In this model, there are 6 pillars: intellectual, emotional, social, spiritual, financial, and physical. There can also be a 7th pillar, but only if it applies to you. This pillar is cultural. Each pillar represents what is important to you, not anyone else, just you. So, for example, intellectual. Do you think education is important? Are you satisfied with a high school diploma, a vocational certification, maybe a master's degree or a PhD? So this represents how you view and what you value regarding education. On each pillar, you will write down what is important to you. For example, emotional, what you care about, maybe animal welfare, the elderly, or social justice. Social, what do you love to do for fun and socialization? Spiritual, is your faith important? Financial, do you like to spend? Do you like to save and avoid debt? Physical, are you physically active? Are you a hugger? When you are looking for relationships to add to your life, look for people who share or who can add to your pillars and you to theirs. Remember, these pillars represent you and your core. In other words, things that are really important to you, so you do not compromise them. If you compromise, that means you will give up things which would weaken the pillar. That pillar will eventually break down, which will add pressure to the other pillars, and which could ultimately cause all of them to crumble. Instead, come into an agreement which means you will add to and strengthen your pillars. Pillars of intimacy are designed to showcase who you are inside and what you value. Protect them and you will protect your relationships and your purpose.
Okay, so this should give you a real clear understanding of what that assignment actually looks like. So if you have your handout, that's great. You can actually write on these. If you don't, you can draw these at home. And so you'll draw these pillars, and for each one, how you're going to construct this model is really important. You're going to take each one, for example, intellectual, and you're going to write down exactly what it said in the instructions. What is important to you intellectually? And so is education important to you? Because if it is, you need to write down, yes, education is important to me, not anybody else, but education's important to me. I think a high school education is important, or a vocational certificate is important, or post-secondary education, higher education. You need to write down, because remember, this is going to demonstrate who you are. We need to know what's important to us, our non-negotiables. And how we connect with somebody with this is, as this one particularly talks about, experiencing a connection with a teacher, professor, mentor, or someone who stimulates you intellectually. This is an area. So each one of these pillars are not only representing something that's important to you, a core value, a core who you are, your non-negotiable. These are also points of connection. These are areas that you are going to connect with somebody on. And we'll explain how this works if you're in a long-term romantic relationship, or if you're having a friend relationship or a colleague. So each one of these are very important. So remember, these are your touch points. These are your connecting points that you will have a connection with somebody. Okay. So the next one is your emotional pillar. And so this is what you feel emotional about, something that you feel connected with emotionally. For me, I have a real passion for animal welfare. The cat was crawling all over me. I have 2 huskies at home. And so I feel very much attached to animals. I also feel very connected with single moms. I have a real passion for single moms, for children, and for the elderly. I have a real emotional connection with social justice. I want to fight for the rights of the underdog, fight for the rights to make sure it's equality for all of us, and that, we get the lion's share for everybody. And so, so I'm pretty passionate about some things. That's what your emotional pillar is going to be. So you're going to write down things that you're extremely passionate about, that you're like, wow, this really, rocks my world. And I'm very passionate about these things. You're going to write what those examples are. Okay. The next one is your social pillar. Okay, your social pillar is stuff you like to do with a group of people. So if you're an introvert, you can't say, okay, well, what do I like to do socially? I know, I want to read a book by myself. Well, that's not a social pillar. Okay, that's something you enjoy doing alone. A social pillar is what you want to do with a group of people, more than one person, not just you, but with somebody else. Places you like to go to, activities you like. Do you like to go to football games? Do you like to go to movies? Do you like to go bowling? Do you like, what do you like to do? Do you get in a group of people and have a book club? That's when it's okay just to read, but you're in a group actually having a discussion with them. What do you love to do with other people? Okay. All right, let's look at the next one. Your spiritual pillar will contain what's important to you spiritually. So do you have a faith base? If you do, is it important to you? Is there a specific denomination or style of practice in your spiritual walk that's important to you? Not anybody else, but what's important to you. You're like, this is what's important to me. I don't want to compromise this, because this is very important to me. This is one of my pillars, one of my core beliefs. Okay. The next one is financial. How do you view money? Do you think that you should save money? Do you think that you should spend every penny that you have? Do you have kind of a lackadaisical attitude towards funds, that, hey, it comes, it goes, I don't really care? Or are you careful with your money because you realize that these are assets that you need to use and they're already allocated for things? What's important to you? All right. The next one is physical. So are you really physically active? Do you like to go for walks? Do you like to work out? Do you enjoy hiking? Are you a couch potato? Do you like physical forms of intimacy? Do you like to hold hands? Are you the touchy-feely person? Do you like to hug one another? These are all examples of somebody that has a physical pillar in place. And so make sure you write down what's important to you. The next one, of course, is cultural. And so if cultural is important to you, if you come from an ethnic background that you hold very dear to you, there are certain ethnicities that really are very collective. For example, a lot of the Asian cultures prefer to marry other Asians because they have a shared culture. It would be the same thing for the Latinos and the Hispanic cultures. But there's some cultures that are very much involved with, we want to keep everybody together, because if I want to celebrate the Chinese New Year, I know that it's not going to be new or different for my spouse. My spouse will totally understand what that is, and we can share that together. So if a cultural pillar is important to you, you need to place that in there. Okay. And so how this actually works is that when you have, so this is, I'm going to address if you want a long-term relationship. If you want a long-term romantic relationship and you want to build a family together with somebody, you need all of these pillars in place. And if culture is important to you, you need that cultural pillar in place. And so each one of these has to be a point of connection with the person that you're going to be involved with or you want to be involved with. The reason why this is important is that these are issues people are going to experience throughout their lifetime. And so you don't want to necessarily have any surprises here. So here's an example. Let's say that you meet somebody and you're very physically attracted to them. They're good looking. They think you're good looking. There's strong, chemistry between the two of you. And before you know it, you're like, I'm in love. We're going to get married. Then suddenly you're pregnant. You have children. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm totally in love with this person. And it doesn't take long before you realize this person was not for you. You guys have nothing else in common. You don't have an intellectual pillar in common. You guys have very different views about education. Maybe spiritually, you guys are worlds apart. Maybe financially, it's a train wreck because you have a different view of how to manage finances than the person that you're with. And so what happens if you only have one pillar in place is that all the pressure of life will rest on that one pillar. And so after a period of time, that pillar will break down and there won't be anything left to support the relationship. And so that's why we see so many times people get involved too prematurely in a relationship. And when they get involved with the person prematurely, they're like, yeah, this is going to be great. Everything's perfect for me. But then they realize, my gosh, we didn't have anything in common. Having things in common is really, really important. Okay. Now, what if you're already in a relationship and you are missing some of these pillars? Don't panic. What you can do is when we're finished with this class, share it with your spouse and say, hey, listen, I want you to draw a model for yourself and I want you to list all the things that are important to you. Then you compare the two models. And when you look at them, it gives you an opportunity to have a conversation, an opportunity to say, I didn't know this about you. I want to learn to like this activity that you like so that we can come into agreement and we can strengthen these pillars. So it's not a loss if you don't have all these pillars in place. You can actually come together and build these pillars. Now, here's what's important that you need to really remember. You don't want to compromise these pillars because these pillars, once you compromise them, what it does is it weakens the pillar. Because if I give up, let's just say that intellectual pillar is important to me. And it is. And so higher education is important to me. That's why I pursued it. That's why I have a higher education degree. And it's important to me. And so let's say that I got involved with somebody or was married to somebody that didn't want education, said that anybody that graduates from college is a dummy anyway. And they didn't value education. I'm not saying that that's bad for them, but it's bad for me. And so they would maybe put me down because I wanted education and maybe said, there's not going to ever be any finances for you to go to school. You're just never going to go to college. Okay. If I agree to that, then what I'm doing is I'm giving away something that's important to my core that might be really significantly important to my purpose. What happens over time is when you consistently end up surrendering and compromising and giving up these core things that are important to you, over time, you're going to look at this relationship and then you're going to get really resentful because you're going to say, I gave up everything for you and you took everything and I'm left with nothing. And now look at all the years that have passed by and I ended up with less than I went into this relationship with. And it creates a lot of conflict. It ends many marriages. And then we're training our children that that's an okay way to have a marriage. We're teaching them this is your norm for a marriage. And so we don't want to do that. So remember, never compromise. What you do want to do is you want to come into agreement. That means, let's just use the intellectual pillar again. Coming into agreement says, honey, education is not, you're not wanting formal education, and that's okay. But we all need education. We all have to learn something. You have to learn a skill so that you can provide for the family. I have to learn a skill. Education's important to me. And so I'm not giving up education, but I'm not forcing education on you either. And so your spouse would then say, what can we do to help you get the education that you're looking for? So you're coming into agreement on that. You have different views, but you're still coming into agreement on that pillar so you don't weaken that pillar. That's really important. And that's what happens to each one of these. So make sure that you use the language of coming into agreement, which is why it's so important for you to get the model from the person that you're with if you're currently involved in a long-term relationship, so you can actually find out what they're really serious about, what they are wanting to do with their life, so that you know, are we actually on the same page with some of these things, or do we need to have some discussions with these? Okay, now what if you're not married? My daughter, and I did this also with my husband, but with my daughter, when she, I don't want to say she was like looking for a husband, but you know, when they're in the dating scene and stuff, she applied these pillars. And so there were a couple of guys that she thought it was going to go into the right direction, but she realized very quickly through conversations that they were lacking almost all of these pillars, except maybe one or two. And so she realized that that relationship was just going to be limited to a friendship, and that she didn't want to take it to any other different levels because she didn't want to run the risk of engaging in any activities that would cause them to have a permanent lifelong connection with each other if they weren't really going to be married or have a long-term family commitment. And so that's how she applied it. And she's now married and expecting my first grandbaby. So we're excited about that. And so what about these pillars individually? Can these individuals support other relationships? Yes. For example, you might have, maybe you're in school, or maybe you go to some of these seminars and you really connect with somebody on an intellectual level. And you say, oh my gosh, I went to this workshop and I learned so much from this person. It just really changed my life. It impacted me so much. I'm teaching my kids this. It's just been fantastic. I'm so grateful for this. And so you've connected with that person on an intellectual pillar, and that's fine. What would be wrong is if you tried to take that pillar into a different arena. And by that, I'll say, so you see a lot of these, I don't want to say you see a lot of them because that's an exaggeration, but we've read stories where there's been teachers at school that became sexually involved with their students, and it created all kinds of problems. Or let's look at the spiritual pillar. Let's say a pastor and his secretary or somebody at the church, they have a spiritual connection that they share. They're like, oh my gosh, this pastor totally, speaks the language that I know. I hear from the Lord when I go to his church. Oh my gosh. And then, oh, I'm in love with him, because they mistake it for I'm in love with the whole person. So it means I guess we should have a physical relationship. And so each one of these pillars is such a strong point of connection. It's a love. I love this teacher because this teacher really spoke to my heart and taught me some wonderful things. Or I love my pastor because my pastor really has such a passion for the Lord. He really loves his congregation. And so I'm so blessed to be in his church. Or I love my football team that we all, we're a part of a football team and we're having so much fun when we do this. And I love every one of my football team members. Just because we have that one connection, and it also is an emotional connection, it doesn't mean we need to add other pillars to it. And so it's okay. And I taught my daughter this. It's okay to have a pillar here. And she actually, and she kids, she kids me for it because I still bring it up. When she was 13 years old, she had a cute guys list. And so she had 135 guys on this list. She had her pastor on it. She had Mel Gibson on it. And she had all these different people. And I said, why do you love Mel Gibson? Because she said she was in love with these guys. And she said, Mom, I saw when he did the movie, The Passion, it really touched my heart. And so I love him for making that movie. And I explained to her what that connection was. We don't want to deny children or ourselves the beauty of experiencing love, because love is super powerful and love is good for us. We just want to make sure we don't abuse it, and we want to keep it where it needs to be. So if it's a relationship that we have with a teacher on an intellectual pillar, and we love that teacher because they're amazing, they've taught us wonderful things, and we have a connection with them, we want to protect that pillar by just loving the intellectual commentary and exchange that we have with that individual, and we leave it there. So we're not only protecting that pillar, we're protecting ourselves and we're protecting that other person. So don't deny love, but let's make sure we keep it where it's at, because love is not a bad thing. We don't want to abuse love, or we don't want to create an environment where love is going to be abused. Okay, I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, let me know. And so that's how it happens if you're married, and how to make how to have points of conversation if there's some controversy within the marriage, making sure that you guys can get on the same page and come into agreement. Or you can use this if you're dating somebody and you're wondering if this person and you are going to be fairly compatible, or if you're married or single and you have individual connections with other people, what that looks like and why that's healthy. Okay, so I hope that makes sense for you. All right, so let's move on. The next thing you're going to do is build your tree house, which goes on top of your foundation. And that includes three things: your purpose in life, your pathway, or how you're going to achieve your purpose, and of course, your personality. And so in your handouts, you actually have pages dedicated to each one of these. You have a page dedicated to your purpose, a page dedicated to your pathway, and a page dedicated to your personality. And so you don't have the vantage point of having that right now. So we're just going to kind of go through these a little bit. On the purpose page, you're going to answer some of these questions like, why was I born? And what happens to your relationships if you do not know or are not actively engaging in what you know is your purpose in life? And so everybody asks the question, why was I born? And that's really important. And so you need to ask yourself this question: why was I born? What can I do with my life that can enhance the lives of other people? Because that's part of the journey experience of discovering what your purpose is. And so that's important to write out if you have it. If you don't understand what it is, it's okay to say, I don't know what my purpose is in life. That's actually okay. The next one is what happens to your relationships if you don't actively engage in your purpose? And so let's just say you do know your purpose, but your partner does not know his purpose or her purpose. Can that create conflict? Yes. And the reason why is when we are actively engaged in our purpose and pursuing it, we have a clear vision and a goal where we're going. And if somebody does not have that in their life, it can create conflict for them because they feel like they're kind of lost at sea. So it's really important to make sure that when you are putting your purpose or this relationship model together, make sure that if you're clear on your purpose, that you can also help to take steps with your partner to help them to discover their purpose. If they don't want a purpose in life, that's going to create some conflict. And so that's why it's so important for us to understand how important relationships are. And when we see these gaps, it's going to help us to know how to address these holes and gaps in the relationship so that we can hopefully repair them and increase health in that relationship. Now, some people will flat out say, I don't care about purpose and I don't want you to have what you think is purpose. And if you think your purpose is so important that you're going to leave me behind, then if you love me, you'll abandon your purpose. Well, that's your red flag right there. And you're going to know this person is not looking out to the best interest of me. And we're going to talk about some of these really important things called the 4 elements of a healthy relationship that will further clarify if your relationship is healthy or unhealthy. And can you save the relationship, or is this a relationship that you need to maybe walk away from? Okay. All right. The second thing you'll talk about is, or write about, is your pathway. Where are you going and what steps have you taken to protect your future? You need to write that down. So is it education that you're after? What steps what kind of, maybe you're in a job already and you're like, no, I'm investing in myself by taking certain classes or seminars or certifications so that I can improve my future outlook. Do you think that your life should have a specific direction? Explain what you believe this should be. So you're gonna complete all of these because this is going to bring clarity to you on where you're going with your life. You would be surprised how many people say, look, my life is Monday through Sunday. I wake up in the morning, I get through my day, and then I go to bed. And I do repeat every single day. And they don't give any thought at all about where they're going or where they're going to end up. They just put it away from their mind and say, I'm not interested, or I can't possibly think about my future. And so we have to think about our future because our purpose in life, the meaning that we have in life, and the meaning that gives, or the purpose that gives meaning to our relationships, is all about a plan, and it's all about a future. It's all about hope. Okay, the last one. What do you think you should do to ensure that you go in the direction you want to go? So these are some questions. These are basic questions that you need to ask yourself. What do I need to do? Well, maybe I need to get involved in some volunteer services. Maybe I need to, whatever it is, what you're wanting to do is enhance your purpose in life. I want to enhance what I can do to not only serve others, but I know uses my natural gifts and talents so that I can feel good about myself, but also I can serve other people. And so think about that in basic terms, since you're actually not going through the whole course to where we're really carving out what your purpose would look like. Start there. What are your natural gifts and talents? What do you love to do that helps to lift other people up? That's what you need to start carving your path around so that you can develop and invest in that. Okay, that's your pathway. And then the last thing, of course, is your personality. What makes you you? You're unique. You might be an extrovert or an introvert. In the rest of the program, we actually dissect that detail out as well on exactly what your personality is. But this is who you are inside. You get to scream to the world, hey, I'm funny. I love to I just love to be with people. I like to make all the cookies for my kids' homeroom classes, or I like to get involved with the community service. I like to help out at the rescue mission. I help out at the church. I help out at the school. I help out at the dog shelter. It could be any of these things. And so you want to be able to say, this is what makes me uniquely me. This is the kind of person I am. When you see me, you'll get me because you'll say, wow, this person lives exactly the life that I pictured for this person. And so this is actually these 3 pages, or these things that you're going to complete, will go on this next model. So at the top of this, where you see all these lines, this is where you get to put the information that you just completed on these last 3 pages. I'm outgoing. I'm funny. I have a very compassionate heart. I'm a real mom or a real dad. And so you're going to put all this up here. And this is what my purpose is. I believe that, I'm supposed to be a doctor or a nurse, or I'm going to school so I can be an accountant, or whatever it is. You're going to put that in there. And on the bottom, you can see these pillars are there again. You're going to rewrite the things that are important to you. Education under the intellectual pillar. Education's important to me. And so by the time you're finished, this is a perfect picture of you. You've written out and you've diagrammed this picture that says, this is who I am as an individual. Because too often, when we look for relationships in our life, we don't know ourselves well enough to know what we need in our life or what we can bring to the party in terms of a relationship. And so when you finish this, this is when you get to allow the other people in your life to complete a model just like this. Then you compare the two, and that's when you can say, okay, now we can have a discussion on how we can come into agreement and make our relationship much stronger. What are some areas that we see have weaknesses in, and how can we fix it? Again, the word of caution, don't compromise because it weakens. and they shouldn't have to compromise either. Make sure that you come into agreement, because that's what's going to make those pillars really strong, and that will enhance and strengthen the relationship. Does that make sense? Okay, so when we don't have these pillars in place, when we don't have a clear understanding of who we are in terms of what you want out of life, it creates a lot of other conflict, and it's like the house of cards. And so on your paper, there's several questions that we have that you can answer. Building a relationship with the wrong pillars can create problems, which may not be seen for years. Explain why that is. Here's another question. What happens if you build a house with only a few pillars in place? What might happen? What happens if you compromise some of your pillars? You'll explain that. Have you ever built a relationship with only a few pillars? What happened? Have you ever built a relationship with compromise pillars? And so you're going to want to explain some of these, because you need to have it very clear in your mind. We don't want it to be academic for you to where you're like, yeah, I know exactly what kind of answers to give. I'm just going to parrot what I think I should say. We need to get this inside of her. Because remember at the very beginning, I said, when we change our thinking, okay, nothing changes when nothing changes. When we start applying these things and really getting into the detail and being serious about, okay, I'm going to do the work and look at making this model for myself. I'm going to answer these questions from the handout, and I'm going to really make it a point of correction in my life so I can what? Create new neurons and new synaptic connections. That's what we're trying to do. Because your brain actually wants you to be successful. Your brain does not want to be saturated with cortisol, because it not only kills part of your brain cells, it shrinks your brain. And that's really scary, because when you're under a lot of stress, and let me tell you, unhealthy relationships can really be super stressful and so damaging that the volume of your brain begins to shrink. Then you have less resources to make healthy decisions. Then you have less resources to manage your emotions. Then you have less resources to offer other people good advice. And of course, you don't have the resources to take your own. And so that's why this is going to be really important, to really look at the relationship piece, which is super important. Probably one of the most important things that you're going to do in your life is to learn to manage and create healthy relationships. Okay. All right. A growth mindset. Now, growth mindset, for some of you who went to the last class will remember, that means you're open to new information. And so for some of you, and maybe all of you, the information we're getting right now is all new information. When you have this growth mindset, it's not only going to increase your quality of life, but you're going to realize this is where you're going to connect at your healthy relationships. So when you're open-minded and you apply the things that you're going to start learning, it will change your quality of life. And you're going to see some massive changes in your world of relationships. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more now. Okay. And so there's 4 reasons. Let me take a look at the time here. So we have a little bit of time. Aisha, do we have like a chance to maybe take a bathroom break? Does anybody need to take a bathroom break?
You have 55 minutes left, and so do
Does
you
anybody need a quick break? Or is it okay, or is everybody good? Nobody's indicating it? Okay, we'll move on then. Okay, we'll just continue. Okay, so now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how do I know if a relationship is healthy? So we built the purpose model, and now we're going to talk about how do we know if a relationship is healthy? And there's actually what we call the 4 elements of a healthy relationship. Okay. And so you need to write these down, because these are really important. Okay. Number 1, I mean you no harm. That means I'm never going to harm you no matter what. No matter what kind of day I've had, I'm not going to harm you. No matter what has happened to me that day, it's no justification for ever harm you. In fact, it will never even enter my mind to harm you. So number 1, I mean you no harm. The next one is, what matters to you matters to me. That means what's important to you is important to me. So if I think that it's important to go to school and to learn some things at a specific institution, it's going to be important to you. And you're going to do whatever it takes to help me get there. And vice versa. I'm going to invest that same thing for you. What matters to me matters to you. What matters to you matters to me. The next one is, I mean you no harm. What matters to you matters to me. And the next one is, and I have just actually drawn a blank, which is really hilarious. So, Aisha, do you remember what it was?
Stands the test of time.
Yeah, that's one of them. And the next one is meaning no harm. Because I put them in the wrong order. That's why I can't remember them, and they're not my notes right here. Let me look at my
What matters
notes.
to you matters to me. I always
Yes.
want the best of you.
There we
Stands
go.
the
In
test-
fact, it was on the tip of my tongue. Thank you. I only want the best for you. That's number 3. Only want the best for you. So whatever it is, I'm going to make sure that the best happens for you. I am not going to harm you. We already know that. What's important to you is important to me. And now I only want the best for you. You're not going to get the scraps. You're not going to get whatever's available. I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure the best of you happens. You get the best of what you need because that's what's important. You're that important to me. And then the fourth one, it must pass the test of seasons, which means that it passed the test of time. And so I just had a friend I was talking to, and she's new into my world recently for maybe the last 6 or 8 months. And so she was talking to me about a relationship that she had. And she was really excited about this new relationship. And so I was talking because I know what her history has been in the past with relationships. And I said, just make sure you give it the test of time before you invest emotionally into this relationship. And I said, because 6 months down the road, you might say, this relationship needs to only be a friendship, not a romantic relationship. Thankfully, she took the advice because she'd actually 3 months ago just had gone through Core Purpose 1.0, which is this class here. And she remembered some of the things that we learned about relationships. And so because of that, she did put him on high, she put him on hold. And no kidding, 3 months later, she said, I start seeing warning signs. And then before you knew it, I realized, oh my gosh, this guy is not going to be good for me. He's going to be unhealthy. He's going to be like the other relationships I've had. So I protected myself and just said, look, I think let's just go ahead and just be friends because I don't think I want to move forward with this relationship because of the following. And she had a very good conversation with this person. He wasn't really happy with it, but she protected herself and she actually protected him because she was making sure that this relationship did not bring any collateral damage into her life, but she also was making sure it didn't bring collateral damage to his life. And that's really important because relationships are some of the most damaging experiences we can have in our life. And so we don't want to force a relationship. And when we know in the end, it's just going to crash and burn. Okay. Because it hurts too many people. So thankfully she used what she learned and she was able to apply it and protect herself. Okay. All right. So here again, here it is, Aisha, 4 elements of a healthy relationship. Okay. What matters to you matters to me. I mean you no harm. I only want the best for you. And it must pass the test of the seasons. So these are very important. Never forget them. Apply this to every relationship, whether it's work related or whether it's romantically related. Okay. You need to also apply this when you go to the store and you're ordering a coffee or you're getting groceries. You need to always treat people with this. And we're going to talk about what happens if they don't reciprocate and treat you with these 4 same elements. Okay. So remember these are very, very important. Teach these to your children. All right. So now we're going to talk a little bit about boundaries. And so boundaries are created to give us a safe place to grow, thrive, develop, and learn. And so think of it like your private garden. Boundaries are less about saying stay out and more about saying, hey, this is my little cute little English garden here. It's really cute and pretty. And I have things in it that I'm growing and I don't want people trampling all over my flowers. And so that's how you have to look at boundaries, not stay out, but this is my area and you can come in if I invite you. Okay. That's how we have to look at them. It's a real healthy way to look at your boundaries. Okay. So did you know that your brain needs boundaries? This is because your brain learns from experiences. Boundaries are less about making a sign that says stay out and more about creating a safe and fun place for you to learn and grow. It's like having a garden or beach all to yourself where you can invite people in or not. Your brain needs protection from harmful intruders so it can focus on growing the best of you. In your world of relationships, in your little garden, you get to enjoy investing in yourself. You get to say, this is the world that really enhances my mental health. This enhances my physical health. It enhances the health of my family because I know that I've got this special area that sometimes it needs to just be quiet time. Sometimes I'll invite other people in, but it's where I want to make sure that I'm staying healthy. And unhealthy relationships are not the people that need to be in your life because that is going to be coming into your garden, your world garden, and they're going to destroy your flowers. And we don't want that to happen. Okay. And you also need to remember that anybody that's in your life is because you invited them there. Nobody held a gun to your head and said, be my friend or I'm going to pop you. What you did is said, I think this person and I get along and I'm going to invite them in. And sometimes we're premature when we invite people into our life. And then it's like a bull in a china shop. It completely wreaks havoc. And so it's really important that we apply some of these principles that we're learning, especially the 4 elements of a healthy relationship, because we're finding out if this person needs to even be in our garden. Okay. That's the testing phase that you get to have with your significant other or even the friends in your life. You need to make sure they're going to be healthy friends, because if they are unhealthy friends, they don't need to be in your world. Okay. So let's take a look at this next video.
Have you ever experienced a relationship that left you feeling exhausted and hurt?
Oh, sorry about
Maybe
that.
you thought you had so much in common with this
Let me
person, but
back
discovered
this
over
up a
time
little
that you made a
bit.
big mistake allowing this
Hold
person
on a
to have
second.
a huge amount of influence in your life. In unhealthy relationships, your life can be turned upside down. And
Aisha, I need to back this up a little bit if you don't mind, okay? Can we do this?
Have
I'm
you
going to
ever wondered
let
how
me
you can figure out
stop
ahead
this
of time
share,
if a
okay?
relationship is
No
a healthy
problem.
Hold on one
This
second.
is a really
Okay.
All righty.
important question because we already
Okay,
know
hold
that
on.
healthy
I'm going to get rid of
relationships
this
are
one. I think we're having a bit of a technical difficulty here. Aisha, can you let me unshare this? Because are you able to see any of this? I apologize, everybody. We're having some technical difficulties here at the moment. Okay, there we go with that. Okay. I'm going to try and share this again, Aisha, if I can. Let's try this one more time. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Let's give it a whirl. Thank you for being patient.
In the world of your relationships, the center of the universe is you. Each orbital ring represents your boundaries. Think of it like little fences. Each boundary ring or little fence represents topics, including words or behavior. Now, people will be placed on these orbital rings depending how close they are to your heart. This means the closer someone is to your heart, the more power and influence this person has in your life. The further away an orbit is, the further away an individual is from your heart, and the less power and influence this person has in your life. In my world of relationships, you will put the people people in your life on this orbital map so you can see how close and how much influence they have in your life, and if you should move people closer or further away from your heart. The first thing you want to do is remember the four elements of a healthy relationship, because these will help you identify whether a relationship is healthy or not. What matters to you matters to me. I mean you no harm. I only want the best for you. Must pass the test of the seasons, that is, pass the test of time. Remember, if these four elements are mutual or two-way, meaning if both you and the other person treat each other with these, then it is a healthy relationship. But if it is only one way, meaning only you practice these towards another person and they do not reciprocate, then it is an unhealthy relationship. Using these, let's see if we need to reposition some people. Darnell is one of your oldest friends, but he constantly talks negatively about things that are important to you. For example, he criticizes your love for animals, especially your beloved dog. This always makes you feel depressed. You know he must be really close to your heart because his actions and words have power and influence over how you feel. You don't treat Darnell this way at all. You treat him with the four elements of a healthy relationship, but he doesn't reciprocate. You realize that this is an unhealthy relationship and he is too close to your heart. The second thing you will do is to apply the boundaries that we mentioned earlier. Since each ring represents a topic or behavior, whenever Darnell starts complaining about your dog, you tell him that topic is not allowed anymore, but you are happy to talk about other things. If he agrees, then that's great. If not, then you will enforce your boundary, meaning every time he tries to talk about your dog or any other topic that is negative or hurtful, you will end the conversation. And since you have less things to talk about, you will naturally spend less time with him. This is how the individual gets moved further away from you, simply because you have nothing to talk about. Because Darnell chooses to be negative and hurtful, he keeps moving himself further away from your heart. His choice. Now let's talk about Mike. Mike is a classmate you only recently got to know. However, he doesn't talk negatively about other people, and you notice that he likes to build people up. You decide to get to know Mike more and determine if he could be a healthy relationship in your life. Over time, you do this and notice that Mike treats you with the four elements of a healthy relationship. So, since it is mutual, you believe this could be a healthy relationship, and you decide that you will intentionally plan to spend more time with him. As you both have lots of things to talk about, you notice he has moved closer to your heart because he can be trusted. Mike has become a great source of help and helpful advice. If we truly care for people, we will always leave the door open for them to come back. Even though you and Darnell rarely see each other, you still treat him with the four elements because you are not only protecting your heart and mental health, but you are also protecting him by not being unkind. Now, if Darnell makes an effort to build a healthy relationship, he might be able to earn his way closer to your heart, or maybe not. But he will have to demonstrate the four elements consistently to you, passing the test of the seasons, which will take time. Remember, you are responsible for the people you invite into your life and how close you allow them to get to you. And you have to choose whether you are allowing people who enhance your quality of life or take away from it. Remember that relationships are, indeed, the most important part of your purpose.
Okay, great. And so, does that make sense to you guys? Any questions for that? Aisha, does anybody have any questions? And so this basically tells you how you're going to put together your model of your world of relationships using the elements that we just learned, okay? And so under my world of relationships, what you will do is remember each orbit represents a topic or a behavior. So these are the natural boundaries that go in place. You know, boundaries can tend to be a bit ethereal, and you might not really, you might say, well, today this is my boundary. Don't bother me. I need a quiet time. That's not really a boundary. But what we're looking for is behaviors or topics that are harmful to you. Okay, we want people to add value to your life. We don't want them to abuse you. So the closer that an orbit is to your heart, so you see these rings around this heart, and by the way, that heart is you. The center of that universe is you. So the closer an orbit, one of those rings, is to your heart, the more power and influence that person has in your life. And you'll know how much power they have if you lose sleep at night. So if you go to bed at night and this one relationship, whether it's a family member or somebody else, a friend or a colleague or somebody, you know that at night, if you go to bed and you worry and you ruminate over something that was said or done that they've done to you or said that you did, and it really robs you of your quality of life, that person has a lot of power and influence in your life. That means that they're really close to you. Okay. Conversely, the further away somebody is from your heart, these boundaries means they have less influence and less power in your life. And that's really important because let's say you're walking down the street and somebody says, "Hey, I don't like your hairstyle." You don't know that person. You're like, "Whatever, I don't know who this person is." It doesn't bother you. Don't lose sleep on it at night. And so, because they don't have a relationship with you, they're not close to your heart. So they don't carry any weight with their words or their actions. Okay. They're far away. Okay. So when you do this, how you start working this out, because what I would suggest you do is you either get this page printed out and you put it on your refrigerator and use magnets. This is really a helpful way to do this when you identify the relationships in your life and how you can move them around. The first thing that you're going to apply always is the 4 elements of a healthy relationship. What matters to you matters to me. I mean you no harm. I only want the best for you, and it must pass the test of the season. And so anybody that's in your world, you're going to get a magnet for, or you're going to place them on your orbit here. And you want to make sure that the people closest to you satisfy the number one criteria, which is the 4 elements of healthy relationship. So everybody that has influence and power over your life need to be treating you with what matters to you matters to me. I mean you no harm. I only want the best for you and must pass the test of the seasons. Okay, pass the test of time. Those are the ones that need to be closest into your world, not far away, but close.
Pardon me, Victoria.
Yes.
There is a hand raised and there are a couple of questions. So I just want to
Yes.
give space if you want to do it now or if you want to do it at the end. You just let me know how you'd like to proceed with it.
Let's go ahead. If they have a question now, I'm wondering, is there a possibility that while they're maybe putting some questions together, I can take a quick bathroom break? Can we just do that for just 5 minutes? And if anybody else needs a quick break, Aisha?
Yes, go potty, ma'am. It's okay.
Thank you. Okay, hold on 1 second. I'll be right back.
Okay, so I'm gonna, do you mind if I,
Go ahead, Tanya.
so I have, this is from the beginning. Somebody was asking, is there ever a good age to change our habits before our children occur out of unhealthy relationships? If that's what you want me to say, or if that's what you're looking for, that's the one question that I have for her. And then this last one was, it's really hard when somebody starts talking bad about something that you love. And then this guy stopped him in the animation. And Angelica, you were saying that it's really, you can't find the words in the moment. Were you wanting her to give some feedback to you on that?
Yeah, I just didn't like if she had any suggestions because that's the hardest part for me. Because like when someone, goes past those healthy boundaries and they make a comment and I would like to like stop them, like, stop talking trash about my dog, but like I can't find the words. I get stuck. Like I'm just like, oh, what if I'm saying it too mean? Or, oh, what if that's just me? Or, oh, I don't want to cause, I'm afraid of their reaction and it being an argument. Like if it's in front of my kid, I'm like, and then I'm like later on, I'm like, oh, if I bring it up an hour later, is it weird? So I overthink everything. And I was just wondering if there's any like suggestions for that. Cause like I just get stuck and then
I'm
it ends
back.
up escalating.
Definitely.
Oh,
Would
hi,
you,
Victoria. You're back.
Yes. Sorry. I had to run to the loo. Too much water, but go ahead. Thank you so much for that, Aisha, for letting me get a pass, a hallway pass. Okay. So do you want to, should we answer some questions here?
Yes,
Yes,
Tanya
please.
had some questions that she had
Okay.
put in the chat.
Yep. Go ahead.
So the first one, or actually we'll just go from the one we just were talking about. She was saying that it's hard when somebody says something really bad about you or about your dog, for example, in the movie. Like, how do you respond quickly to the person without overthinking it too much, right? Without
Right.
thinking too much, but then not fearful that you're going to hurt their feelings too. But
Mhm.
just being able to act in those moments. She was kind of wanting to have
Good.
um,
Very
some
good.
thoughts and ideas on that.
We're actually going to address this as we go on with this. And so, but let me just tell you ahead of time, remember what I said earlier, the reason why in these pillars of intimacy, when we did that first model, we want to make sure that if somebody is not, or the four elements, I mean, you know, harm, only want the best for you, and we realize this relationship is going to go nowhere. We said, let's just be friends with this, because we don't want to hurt them either. And so it's good that you have in your head, I don't want to hurt this person, because already you're showing signs of saying, I mean you no harm. Okay. That's really brilliant that you already have that view, because that's a really good jumping off point. What you want to do though, is you want to be able to say, look, this is a really hurtful conversation or topic, and I don't think that you're meaning to hurt me, because you're going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I think you're not meaning to hurt me, but it really hurts my feelings because of A, B, or C. You know, my dogs are really important to me. I love them. I know you're not a big fan of dogs, but it hurts me. So I just want to put it out there. Let's just not talk about it. Okay. Let's just not talk about the dogs. And so I want to, and then just move on from there. So don't overthink it, but just say, hey, let's just not talk about the dogs, you know, or let's not talk about my mom, or let's not talk about, you know, whatever, politics or whatever. It really hurts my heart. We don't see eye to eye on that. And I don't want this to be an area of contention between us. Let's just not have that topic of conversation. So you just come right out and say it really casually and then move on. Did that answer the question?
Uh, yes, thank you.
Okay, so don't make an issue of it. Be sweet about it. I love that you didn't want to hurt that person. And so if they persist, remember in the video, it says they're choosing to move themselves out of the orbit. The reason why that happens is they are actually choosing, they're saying, I'm going to hurt you. I already know it hurts you. I already know it bothers you, but I'm going to hurt you. But when you put the conversation to an end and say, this isn't, I'm going to walk away. If you're going to keep talking about, I'll just walk away. And then you can appeal to them and say, listen, this is why it's bad for you to say this. It not only harms me, it harms you. And I don't want to see you hurt. When you talk about this negative thing and you willingly know it hurts me, it's damaging the interior of your brain. It's literally disrupting connections. You're getting cortisol in your body that's damaging you. And I don't want to see you hurt. I don't want to see you damage relationships, because it's just going to harm you. And I care enough about you to where I don't want you to do this. It's like watching somebody maybe do drugs in front of you, and you're like, this is so bad for you, shouldn't do it. And they're like, I'm going to do it anyway. Well, I don't want to be with you if you're doing it, because I don't want you to be harmed. I really don't want you to harm yourself. I don't want you to walk in front of that car or walk in front of that train, because I care enough about you. And that's the same thing with our words, not just our actions, but our words. Does that make sense? Okay, I hope that answered your question.
Equipment that has been checked out
Yes, thank
will
you.
need to be returned in.
Okay, thank you. Okay, what else? Any other questions?
Yes, there's another one up at the top, Brittany Gibson, but there's one other one that was in the chat way earlier. And she was
Okay.
asking, is there ever a good age to change our habits before our children occur? Ever good age to change our habit before children occur our unhealthy relationships, or so that they don't have our unhealthy
So
relationships,
they
right?
don't accrue, they don't
They
take
don't,
in immediately. Immediately. If your child is 5 years old or 13 years old or 18 years old, and you realize I got to make changes in my life, you do it now. You start today. You don't wait a day longer. You immediately start. And you know what? You want to, and if they're older, even younger, you can enlist their help. Say, mommy's trying to, or daddy's trying to do this. And so I need you to remind me to do it if you see me not doing it. Okay. Because then they're like, oh, this is good. I can do this. And then it helps to train them as well. Okay. Even if they're older. Hope I answered that question. Okay. Other question?
So I kind of wanted to ask something off of the previous person's discussion that they brought up, because I'm actually having something similar happen with my neighbor.
Okay.
Actually tried to set boundaries because she's a huge animal lover.
Okay.
And she's actually a friend of my mom's that moved in next to me, so she's my neighbor now.
Okay.
And we have 3 dogs.
Mhm.
She has continually come into our yard and like given my dogs water or food, or come and taken my dogs for walks and whatever,
Oh,
freely whenever she feels like they are not being treated
looked
the way
after.
we, yeah. And so like we've tried to explain to her like how many times we're filling up their water a day, or we only want them to be fed twice a day and within these hours. And she seriously will not like listen to any of the boundaries that I've tried to set.
Okay.
So what do you do when you continually have someone that just
And they
won't?
violate a physical space there. Have you talked, since she's a friend of your mom, have you talked to your mom about it?
Yeah, even my aunt has tried
Has
to.
involved themselves. Okay. Well, then what I would do is can you put a padlock on your gate so she can't come into your yard?
Um, we kind of have like an adjoining yard. Like there's no fence between our spaces right now. I'm in the middle of trying to figure out a fence, but I think that's part of the problem, is that she kind of
Yeah,
shares a backyard
right.
with me.
That would make a big difference if you're able to put a fence between the two of you, because if she's not, then presumably your dogs go into her yard.
They don't. They're in their own kennel area, and so she
Okay.
actually their space and our.
Okay. If they're in a kennel area, is it a gated kennel?
Yeah, she actually goes in there and will take
Opens the kennel out, right?
Yeah.
Can you put a padlock on their kennel door?
Um, I mean, because it's like a what's it called? Chain link. It's not like a chain link.
Right.
It's just like a
But she has to open a gate in order to get to them. Is that correct?
so to speak. Yeah. It's not like an actual doorway that I could necessarily put a lock on.
Okay.
And then like I don't know. It's been where I've even tried to take my leashes away from an area that she knew they were in, because we have a
Right.
bucket of dogs, and she just uses her own leashes and
Okay.
like ways
So,
to.
and you've had a sit down conversation. What has her response been?
That she just doesn't feel like we are taking care of our dogs to her standards, and
Right.
that they are being neglected.
Okay.
Because she has a dog that she keeps in her home, and she thinks
Right.
our dogs should be in our home 24/7.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah. And so, well, I'll tell you what, in this particular situation, she's obviously, in terms of relationship, she's violating physical space at your house and she's trespassing. And she's taking animals out of your property. So it's a form of theft that she's taking your dogs and taking them for walks and doing her own thing. It's a form of theft. And so I would have a more firm conversation with her and continue to be sweet about it and say, look, I don't want to take this and escalate this to where we have to get the authorities involved because you're trespassing and you're abducting my dogs and you're taking them out. And so, honestly, this isn't okay. And I get that you have a different way that you take care of your animals. Our dogs are well loved. They're family dogs. We adore them. They're part of our family, but this is where they're at for now. And we do that to keep them safe so they don't run into the street and get run over. And so we have our dog food that we feed them. We have a special set schedule that we have for them. And you need to abide by this. Otherwise, this is going to be escalated because I'm concerned about the well-being of my animals and about my own family safety. If you feel comfortable coming in and absconding with my dogs, you're going to feel comfortable maybe doing some other things. And so I need you to stop. And if she doesn't stop, then I would call the Humane Society and ask for some advice. Because, just gradually escalate it and give her opportunity to back off. And if she doesn't, then just call the Humane Society and say, here's the situation. What do you recommend that I do? And then you could bring that information to her and say, hey, I met with so-and-so from the Humane Society. This is their advice to me. What are your thoughts? And so, and just keep gradually doing it, because we don't want to overreact and, get the SWAT team in and take the
Right.
lady out. You know what I mean? She's your neighbor, right? And so you can still salvage this. And so, but just gradually escalate it. Have another conversation with her. Tell her you don't want to escalate it, but you will if she does it again. And say, hey, I want to be friends. When we have a barbecue, we'd like for you to come over and play with the dogs, and we're all playing together. It's awesome. I have no problem with that. And say, but this is just over my comfort zone. You can understand how you would feel if I went into your house and took your dog and said, I don't think you're taking care of your dog. And say, how would it make you feel? And say, so that's how it's making me feel. And so see if you can appeal to that, because again, you don't want to harm her, and she is your neighbor. Last thing you want is bad neighbors. That's always never a win for anybody. And then call the Humane Society and just take their advice. Listen to what they say. Tell her this is what the Humane Society just said. And say, so what would you like me to do? So does that help at all, Brittany?
Yeah, it does. I mean, for one, it's like she's been kind of making me feel like I over exaggerate, and she's been kind of going over my head to other people.
Yeah.
And just kind of acting like I'm being unreasonable for not like allowing her to do these things.
That's kind of funny. And hey, I'm going to take your dog. And so just, I would try those and see. And what you're also doing too is you're giving her an opportunity to correct the problem. And so you're just trying a bunch of different ways to say, hey, maybe we can correct this and resolve it once and for all. Okay. And, maybe she's just a lonely lady that she's by herself, and she has she goes beyond what I would call the definition of animal rights. And she's like imposing there's a deep-seated need to take care of animals at her level and not trust that other people can take care of their animals. Listen, my dogs are huskies and they're outside a lot, and we're on 5 acres, so they have a collared fence, so they get shocked if they try to breach the boundary. And my neighbors next door had 3 very big dogs. They had a German Shepherd, a Golden Retriever, and they had a mutt, but he was really big. And I would think those dogs should be outside all the time, right? Because it's good for, I'm big about that. As long as the weather's nice and they have plenty of food and water, I think, and they're in a safe place, I think it's good for them. And so, but they didn't, those dogs were house dogs. And so it was like, hey, that was their deal. I never called them and said, I'm going to take your dogs out because they need to be outside. I'm never going to do that because it's their dogs. And they never called me up and said, get your dogs in the house because they've been outside too much, because we respect each other. And hey, they were good to their dogs. I'm good to my dogs. We just manage our animals differently. Okay. Does that help, Brittany?
It does. Thank you.
I hope it works. Let me know. Send me a note or something and tell me what level it has to go to. It might have to go a little bit further, but she is like, reaching your boundaries. That's a physical space that would make me nervous if somebody felt comfortable coming over to my property and doing that. I wouldn't appreciate that at all. And so you're right to raise that. So thank you for asking that question. It was really good. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Are we good? Can I continue?
There is another one on here, and I'm not sure. They said, what if it's a financial situation and you have no other support and you have no choice?
Okay, so we're talking about a financial pillar. And so somebody else controls the money and you have no opportunity to get involved and invested in that. And so that's really tricky. And so that's why it's still important once we finish this whole course here, what I want to do is to maybe address that question, because when we have a relationship where somebody is saying, I'm in control of everything, and you don't have, and they're withholding, and it's creating conflict within the relationship. Obviously we want to, hopefully that person would be willing to do the pillars of intimacy, willing to make their own model. If they're like a hard no, a hard pass on any of that, then the only thing that you could do, and you're like, there's no way for me to get out. If there's not any physical abuse in the relationship, but they just happen to be controlling the money, but there's no physical or emotional abuse in the relationship, you can still get some personal counseling with this and find out, how can I help my spouse to come into agreement on where some of this money goes. In the old school of life, and I say old school, we're talking about, the generation that preceded me, a lot of times the men were the ones that handled all the money, period. And that the women really didn't have any access to it. And they also didn't have a job. And so they weren't making a financial contribution. And so the rule of thumb was that if the man made the money, he made the decisions. And so if you're in a relationship like that, and it's an old school type of relationship, you really have to be able to rely on the fact that you hopefully have a healthy relationship with this individual anyway, and that this individual would be willing to have a conversation with you to see that maybe there's another side to the financial pillar. And so if they're not, then, you have to make a decision what you want to do in terms of bringing some money in so that you could have some extra funding. I don't know if I'm addressing the issue, because the question didn't provide a lot of detail, just that single question. And so if you're thinking, I would like to have some money of my own instead of having to ask for permission for money, maybe you could consider, babysitting, or hey, you could babysit Brittany's dogs. That's what you could do. You could be their security guard. And you could watch her dogs and excuse me, make a few extra dollars so that you could have access to some funding. I don't know if I've answered that question, but I had limited information to go from. So if you need to elaborate on that question, feel free to add some more details in that chat. Okay. If there's no abuse, then that's something that you could, do, is try to bring some more money into the family. If there is a lot of abuse that's taking place, then you definitely need to get some professional help to find out what you can do to resolve this, or maybe worst case scenario, provide an exit strategy. But you have to make sure that you're not in any abuse. And that's the number one thing in relationships. Because relationships are where we're going to experience any kind of abuse. So we want to make sure that you're in a safe place. Okay. Okay. Can I continue with this, Tanya, or should I wait?
You're good to go. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you guys have any more questions, I'm happy to answer some more, but let's continue. Okay. So back to the world of relationships. The thing you're going to always work from is the 4 elements of a healthy relationship. Now, if it's mutual, that means if I treat you with the 4 elements, which I will, because that's just who I am, it's just part of my life, I'm so used to it, I am going to treat you this way. I'm going to be present in a conversation. I'll never harm you. I only want the best for you. And I can promise you 10 years from now, I'm going to treat you this way, the same. Okay. If you treat me this way also, if both of us treat each other with these 4 elements, it's a healthy relationship. And that's awesome. But if only one person treats you this way, like we saw in the cartoon, where we saw one person was treating the friend with a healthy relationship, the 4 elements, but the guy wasn't responding. He kept being mean to his dog and talking about his dog. And so that relationship was unhealthy. And so that's a clearest, easiest way to determine if the relationship is healthy or unhealthy, is if mutually you guys practice these things. Now, in all fairness, if they don't understand what these elements are, you need to be able to at least explain it to them. Because some people, again, like most of us, really don't know what a healthy relationship is. We don't know how to construct it. We don't know what the mechanisms are of a healthy relationship. So when we simplify it and just put 4 elements, we just put 4 pieces together and say, if you do this and we do it consistently with each other, we have a healthy relationship. If you're in a relationship where somebody's mean to you, or they don't want the best for you, or they're very hot and cold with you, they don't care about you, it's not a healthy relationship. Okay. And so we're going to show you how to manage these relationships. But the third thing you're going to add is boundaries, which we just briefly touched on. The boundaries are what we call the no-fly zone. And again, remember, each ring is a boundary. It represents a topic or a behavior. And as it says, it represents a topic or behavior. So it has that little arrow there, if you can see that. Okay. Now, here's Sally Sunshine. You can see that she is in a close orbit to your heart. So that must mean she has a lot of power and influence over you. So whatever she does, it's going to impact your emotional frame of mind. You're going to know, I feel miserable today. Oh, Sally was over today. Okay. She has a lot of power and influence. And so what needs to happen though, is she needs to be moved out further. And how that happens is that exactly what we talked about with, it wasn't Brittany, was it Angelica? I couldn't see because I didn't have my glasses on. And so, but when somebody says something that harms you and you realize, oh my gosh, I'm feeling sick every time I have a conversation with this person occupies a space that's close to your heart. And so that's when you tell them, we're not going to have this topic of conversation. It really hurts me. Sally, I know that you don't know that you're hurting me, but it really causes a lot of pain in my life for the following reasons. So let's not talk about it. And if she persists, when she has that conversation again, say, we're not going to talk about it. Let's move on to something else. We're going to have another topic. And with some people, it might be a political thing. You know, politics is a real hot topic. And so it could be that somebody says, you know, I'm going to vote for this candidate. And you're like, look, we don't need to have that conversation because you and I are going to be around and hopefully be friends a lot longer than this person's going to be in office. And so let's maintain the integrity of our friendship by let's not having a conversation about this guy. Okay. And if this person persists, when they start talking about that topic or whatever it is, you say the conversation's over. Let's talk about something else. And if they continue to persist, end the conversation, say, let's talk another day when you're feeling better. Say, this isn't good for me, but it's not good for you either. This is creating so much contention in your heart because of what you're saying. It's harming you. So I don't want you to be harmed anymore. So we're going to end this conversation. What happens over a period of time if Sally continues to do this is that, let's say the next time you're together, it's not politics or your dog, she's talking about one of your kids and is complaining about it. Conversation's over. We're not talking about that person. If she then comes over and says, I don't like the choice of your hair color, we're not going to talk about my hair color. We're not going to do that. If she persists, conversation's over. And what happens over a period of time naturally and organically is that Sally is choosing to have less things to talk about with you. So if there's less things to talk about with you, then there's less opportunity that you're going to be with her. You have nothing to talk about, so there's no point in getting together. She calls you, hey, you want to get together, Brittany? Well, what do you want to talk about? Well, let's talk about politics. Nope. Let's talk about your dog. No. Let's talk about your hair color. Nope. Let's talk about your kid. Nope. Well, I guess we have nothing to talk about. And so that was Sally's choice, not yours, because she's harming you. And you're saying, no, we don't need to harm each other with this. You need to just not do it. And so naturally, you just have less time to spend together, which is actually really beautiful because you're not kicking her to the curb. You're not telling her, get out of my life, loser. I'm so sick of you. I'm over. I'm done. We're not going to say that. Because remember, we're still going to treat her with the 4 elements of a healthy relationship. She's just not reciprocating. So she's moved herself away from us. And then we're giving her a chance during that phase to rethink about her life. Maybe she's had some difficulties. Maybe she needs to sort some things out. And maybe one day she'll try to come back into your life if she's able to satisfy the 4 elements of a healthy relationship. People don't just get to come back because they said they've changed. People have to earn their way back into your life. And if you've done this to other people, you have to earn your way back into their life. Okay. So this is a two-way street. This isn't about everybody out there's the meanie and I'm the victim. This is about we all play a role and sometimes we're the meanie. Okay. And somebody else is the victim. And we got to fix that in ourselves, but we also have to protect ourselves to make sure that people aren't doing it to us. Okay. And so then later on, let's say you meet Joy, you decide that he's a great guy. He treats you always with the 4 elements of a healthy relationship. And he's a good counselor, good source of counseling, gives you great advice, has some good comments about some things, gives you some insight to some things. And you find, wow, you know what? He really brings out the best in me. And he's really a good guy. He doesn't even badmouth Sally. Yeah, this is a good guy. He's going to be a friend that I could probably have in my life. So this is how it works. It's very organic. You're not kicking anybody to the curb. You're trying to help them with their mental health and physical health by reminding them that when they say and do the things that they're doing, they're not only harming you, but they're harming themselves. And we want to prevent them from doing that. I've had this in my own life, even with family members. And I said, you know, obviously, when you see me, I bring the worst out in you. When you see me, you think, wow, all this anger and hostility is coming out. And I don't know how to fix that. I don't know how to have that conversation with you. And so because of that, what I would like is maybe we just need to have some time where I'm not in your life, where I'm bringing the worst out in you, because clearly that's what's happening. And so it gives people a chance to reorganize their thoughts. And if you put these people on a magnet, and this is what a lot of people do, is they put people on their, you know, on a little magnet, they put different magnets around the circle, and then they're able to intentionally say, okay, I can see where this person is in my world. They need to be moved out, or this person needs to be moved in, so I need to make space for them. So it gives you a chance to physically actually manage your relationships so that you are clear on where everybody is. And don't forget, sometimes this is fluid. Sometimes people go through a rough spell and they need some time alone. And so they need a time of separation from you. Or there are people that need to come closer, or people that don't need to be in your world at all, where they need to be so far removed that you realize that this person was so damaging and so toxic, excuse me, that this is what I don't want in this person's, they can't be in my world anymore. And that, although that only happens on a rare occasion, it does happen. Okay, so keep that in mind. So it's your world and your relationships, okay? You're responsible for the relationships in your life, and you get to manage the relationships in your life. And the information that we just provided for you is going to be perfect in terms of helping you understand how to manage them, how to identify healthy relationships, how to be a healthy relationships, and where to place those relationships in your life so that you improve your quality of life, okay? Here's another reason why, or several reasons why we want to build healthy relationships. It's all about not just ourself, but you can see that we care enough about our partner. I want this healthy relationship. I want the pillars of intimacy in place because I care enough about you too. And in terms of girls getting involved and guys getting involved with relationships prematurely, because I'm never in favor of young relationships making a lifelong commitment before they've satisfied some of their personal goals, is that it says, I care enough about my future and I care enough about my partner. That's why I want to be healthy too, and I want to be fully developed. And so it's really important that we give ourselves and our children an opportunity to mature into healthy relationships so that they can become a healthy person and they will naturally choose healthy relationships in their life. Okay, now we talked about the exits. Okay, what happens when you habitually choose these unhealthy relationships? And so the beautiful part of it is that your brain is so plastic that it's always going remodeling. It's always doing the remodeling thing. And so it has a specialized brain cell. They're called microglial cells, and they're little housekeepers. And they search for neural pathways, or these connections, these synaptic connections that I talked to you about earlier, that and they search for pathways that aren't being used. And when they're not being used a lot, just like a bridge that is never being used, the county or the state says, let's tear that bridge down. It's taking up valuable real estate. We can put something else in there. And so these microglial cells say, wow, exit 132 is not being used because, you know, Beverly learned how to have a healthy relationship. She's practicing the four elements of a healthy relationship. She's inserting the boundaries. She has the pillars in place. And so she's constantly scanning, what is this relationship is healthy or not? And she's now bringing in different relationships into her life. So the brain says, guess what? This exit from Joe that she used to have and Bob, that's not being used anymore. So let's tear it out. And then one day you'll notice, wow, I can't even imagine what it would be like to be in relationship with Joe or Bob, because these people are so different from me. I can't even in my brain, I don't have any brain power to wrap around that. And so that's the beauty of what your brain does. It destroys with the microglial cells that exit because you don't use it anymore because you're applying the things you just learned tonight, and it rebuilds the new exit to 145. Does that make sense? It's absolutely brilliant. Our brain wants to cooperate with us and wants to make it easy. And and when we build these connections, it's second nature to us. We don't have to think about it. And that's what's so glorious, because your brain likes to take shortcuts. It doesn't want to have to relearn how to make healthy relationships over and over again. Once you learn how to do it, it's set in stone, which is absolutely brilliant. Okay. Then you want to start looking for other healthy people in your life and intentionally look for some of these people. Okay. And think about what would happen if you had only healthy people in your life. Honestly, what would happen if all the people closest to you were healthy people? What would your life look like? And here's some of the things that you need to look for in people when you're on your search for other healthy relationships. Somebody who has clear and defined purpose in their life. They operate from the vantage point of truth, not relativism, but truth. And that means they treat everybody beautifully and well and loving. They never bash people. They don't criticize people. They don't mock people, but they're very good to all people. They're problem solvers. They look to try to problem solve. If they don't have the answer, they brainstorm with other people to problem solve. They have healthy relationships in their life, because healthy relationships is a currency that you cannot afford not to have if you want to have a good life. And of course, these are people also that have positive thinking. These are the people that never say the sky is falling. They say, there's some things happening. What can we find the silver lining in? Let's place our brain power there and our energies there so that we can have a better outcome. And so these are some things to think about. If you are in an unhealthy relationship, we ask you just to look at this. It's called the ACT. Assess who's in your life, have the courage to make some changes. And if you know that you need to make some transitions out of the relationship, what steps do you need to take? And who do you need to engage with that can help you do it safely? Okay. Again, we've already talked about the cortisol hormone, which is negative in terms of if it's under stress that you're having it. And it actually shrinks a special part of your brain, also in addition to the brain volume, called the hippocampus, which is important for memory and learning. And so memory and learning is really important in relationships, because we learn how to live our life in the context of relationships. So if we're in an unhealthy relationships, we have learned an unhealthy avenue of how we're going to live our life. But if you're in a healthy relationship, you're going to learn the most beautiful experience of why life is so precious and valuable, and why you were called here to have a great life. All right, then we have to ask ourselves, what do I really believe? Do I believe that I'm responsible for the people that are in my life? It's a clear yes or no. Yes, I'm responsible, or no, I'm not responsible. Okay. And we finish it up with the final life lesson, which we had earlier. Nothing changes when nothing changes. Thank you guys so much for coming to class. If you have other questions, please feel free. I'm going to go ahead and cut it off now because that's the time and I don't want to delay this for anybody. If you have questions, please send them over to Tanya or Aisha, and they'll make sure I get a hold of them, and I'm happy to answer those and get back with you on those questions, okay? In the meantime, thank you guys so much for coming. I do appreciate it. Have a great evening, and I really hope that you enjoyed this class and have gained some valuable tools on how to change your life in terms of healthy relationships. Thank you again for coming, and I hope to see you at some other future classes. Bye-bye.